if you want to get really technical about it.
And how did you decide to get specifically into the substrate business?
I was eventually invited to work with the company and represent them.
So, hi, Chris. Thank you for coming on the show. I would like to ask you if you could introduce yourself a bit more and also your company, HortGrow.
Yeah, my name is Chris Vaos. I've been working with HortGrow for a number of years now as Director of Product and Business Development. We're a small substrate company. We have our own processing plant in India. And, we focus mainly on precision horticulture in the berry markets, as well as cannabis. Those are pretty much our two target markets. As for myself, I've been involved with horticulture for almost 20 years. I have an academic background in engineering, and I try to apply that mindset in as many different ways as I can. Because horticulture is essentially a technology industry.
And your company only manufactures substrates, if I get it right?
Yes, we also just provide solutions. A lot of what I do with the company is really just providing knowledge base. Even if I'm working with growers, sometimes a cocoa core based substrate may not be the best option for them. And I'm very honest and open about that. Of course, I believe in the product. I use the product myself, when I've been in charge of cultivation operations, but, it's, there's pros and cons to every different substrate, including organic soil, living soil, coconut core, various passive or active hydroponic, recirculating, drain to waste systems, whatever it might be.
So how did you get into agriculture? You said you've been doing horticulture for some 20 years, but how did it come about?
I started growing cannabis kind of for myself, and when things became legal in California in the early years, I went out there and got involved and found myself in Colorado in the industry there for a long time. And admittedly, I'm a city person, but my family does come from Greece originally, and we have a background in ornamental flower growing in greenhouses. So eventually, starting as an indoor grower, the mind got curious, and I started going into greenhouse production more. And from greenhouse production, I didn't want to just do hydroponics. I was very interested in large soil volumes, working with organics, working with other analytical methods. And it just kind of opened up a whole world to me for growing a large variety of plants.
And how did you decide to get specifically into the substrate business?
I made a name for myself as a consultant, kind of doing plant health and troubleshooting. A lot of times that circled back to plant nutrition, nutrients, substrate, and source water. Pretty much those three are all very interconnected. And the importance of having a good, clean substrate became, of precedence, because there's, especially in the early years, 10 years ago, or even as recent as 7 years ago, there was a lot of cocoa core specifically that came very salty, that had a lot of problems. Other products like stone wool, rockwool also have, specific conditioners and ways you have to treat them that you have to be aware of. And because of that, they can have issues in their supply chain, variation from batch to batch, and even growing in peat, same kind of issues. It's very acidic. You have to buffer it. So working in that nutrient plant health mindset, it always came back to just having a good, reliable substrate. And HortGrow specifically was one company that I always went back to. I ended up building a relationship with the CEO and founder, and it was just a product that I recommended on my own that I just knew was very clean, very reliable, and had control of the supply chain. It was very easy to reach out to the owner and get direct feedback, even shoot some ideas back and forth on new ideas for substrate types and sizes, different fine, coarse materials, having different densities. And then all the crop steering stuff of the last 5 years really kind of solidified it, because you really want to have something with consistent water holding capacity. And there wasn't a lot of products on the market. Still really isn't that have, an organic and sustainable source. And HortGrow was that. So once again, kept going back to them, and was eventually invited to work with the company and represent them.
Well, that's quite the journey.
Yeah.
So how would you compare cocoa coir with, for example, rockwool or perlite? Do some crops grow better with one substrate and other crops with the other one, or how does it work?
Yeah, I would certainly say so. Yes. Cocoa coir is kind of more forgiving, although you can have as much air porosity as perlite, or very close to. But a little more water holding capacity. Perlite can be great for certain crops in certain environments, but I see it more of really as a research substrate, because you can directly impact what the plant is doing through a nutrient solution with absolutely no contribution from the substrate itself. But the trade-off there is that it's going to dry down very quickly, right? But it's almost impossible to overwater, so I can, inject nutrient solutions and observe their reactions in tissue, sap, even visually, the plant feedback very quickly. But in a high production environment, unless you absolutely have the most precise irrigation system, perlite can be very tough to work with. That, and also, perlite dust itself is toxic when it's dry. You don't want to breathe it. You have to handle it a specific way. So when you scale that up at a large facility where you have employee safety and maybe even, agricultural or health inspections, it's very important to address these issues where, coconut fiber is just a fruit. It's pretty harmless, whether it's dry or wet. So, in comparison to rockwool, I would say rockwool is somewhere between perlite and coconut coir. It's a solid matrix instead of a loose aggregate. So, it's not going to dry out quite as quick, and it's plug and play. It's, it's like, Minecraft. You're just building. Yeah. You're stacking blocks very easily. So big transplants in big greenhouses work very well. However, once again, when it's dry, the same thing, you don't want to breathe the dust for rockwool. So there's an employee safety there for large scale operations. It's very important to consider. And the waste with rockwool, we're filling up landfills with it. In Europe, you have a lot of rockwool facilities that will recycle it, but we don't have that in North America. So it just gets completely thrown away. It's inorganic. It's as far as the environmental impact, it's certainly not as clean and sustainable of a product, but it does lend itself very well to precision growing. Once again, not as forgiving as cocoa coir, but it is a fairly good substrate on its own. And I know a lot of growers that prefer rockwool over anything, and probably will for the rest of their lives. I'll never be able to convince them otherwise. But like I said, everything has a pro and con, and a lot of people that are new to controlled environment agriculture, horticulture, new to gardening, new to hydroponics, I usually tell them, learn on cocoa coir. It's kind of like training wheels. And then if you feel confident in your abilities at that point, and you feel confident in your equipment and your infrastructure, and you know how to have precise irrigation, then move to rockwool, which is a little more advanced, but can also be problematic. Also requires conditioning. All these other things.
Why do you call it advanced though?
If you want to get really technical about it, substrates like soil, peat, and cocoa have more of a parabolic dry down curve. So if you're watching how they dry down, they also have a higher CEC, so they will absorb some of the nutrients that you're feeding and allow for that exchange. So as you're going through that more parabolic dry down curve, there's still more opportunity for the plant roots to exchange both water and nutrients with the substrate itself. Substrates like rockwool have very low CEC and very linear dry down curves. So you're going to be logging data on all of your irrigations exactly and feeding exactly what you need. And there's not a lot of wiggle room if your pH gets out of check, if you don't have enough calcium, if, if you underfeed or overfeed phosphorus, all of these things will become immediately relevant in a substrate like rockwool, because even from looking at the scientific graphs, it's very linear, and like much like what I said about perlite in the beginning, it's going to give you that direct feedback loop, and not provide anything from the substrate itself, which can be good, can be bad. If you're aware of it and you're the type of grower that loves nerding out on data and graphs, rockwool may be the best for you. If you're kind of someone who is more worried about the plants and the environment and the overall scheme of things, and you don't want to be caught up on, super fine-tuned, precision, advanced irrigation techniques, it may not be the best substrate for you.
Where do you source the material from? Do you have your own coconut plantations, or do you just buy the husks from other farmers?
We don't have our own plantation. We do have our own processing plant, which not many cocoa companies have. The product does come from that part of India, from southern India, and it's comes from various coconut plantations. We do have a quality control of what cocoa we take in. It's a very sustainable supply. It's it's inland, highland cocoa in regions with a lot of precipitation. You don't want cocoa that's been grown near salt water, because it can cause a lot of issues, and you can't ever rinse all of the sodium out. So we do have a quality control with that. And then we have our own processing plant where we actually recycle as much of our wastewater. We harvest rainwater. We're trying to be 100% renewable with all of our water usage there. We pretty much, recycle all of our wastewater as much as we can till it's gone, with a lot of different quality control factors in place there.
Why did you choose to have the factory in India and specifically Tamil Nadu?
Pretty much all of the coconut substrate companies either sourced from India or Sri Lanka. So our founder, James, is actually from that region of India originally himself. He was a raspberry grower with Driscoll's for a long time, with a very large berry company. And, he saw a need for a clean product, and he went back to India and set this up. I believe the reason really, if you want to get into geography, is India, Sri Lanka are really the only regions of the world where coconuts are grown to the maturity that's required for those husks, and not very close to the ocean, don't have all that saltwater intrusion. Where, coconuts from other parts of the world, maybe Mexico or Indonesia, they're harvested a lot earlier. So generally it's a byproduct of like the coconut oil industry, which requires more mature coconuts, where if you're harvesting coconuts for the coconut water or the meat, you're going to want a younger, immature coconut, which doesn't make a good substrate.
Yeah. Understand. And where do you see the substrate industry in 5 to 10 years? Are there any groundbreaking developments behind the scenes, or do you think it will be the same as you said with the rockwool?
That's a great question. And I've addressed this question a few times before. I've seen a lot of other novel substrate types kind of come and go. People are looking for other sustainable sources. It certainly seems like the trend is moving away from peat. I think the ornamental flower industry still likes peat because of its natural acidity, and a lot of the ornamentals they grow require, they're acid-loving plants. But outside of that, if we're talking about, edible horticulture, consumable stuff, produce, it seems like, the 2 or 3, cocoa, rockwool and peat are still pretty strong and hold their market shares pretty well. I would say what's improving is, our data analytics, all of our instrumentation, our sensor systems. Just in the last 5 years, we have a great relationship with Arroyo and the tools they've developed for crop steering and measuring dry downs, measuring, stacking EC in the root zone. So I think I would say in the next 5 to 10 years, I would see only more advances in those kind of data metrics coming back to us, helping us make in the field real time fertilization decisions, specifically around the substrate of choosing, and possibly even AI getting involved with that, helping us make those decisions. Like, I would love to see a system that fertilizes and maybe even selects different ratios of fertilization based on AI real time feedback data. So I think that's the way it's going to go. Probably less of a focus on substrates. It seems like for the most part, at least larger commercial growers and even medium-sized family operators have more or less chosen the substrates they want to stay with. But I think the overall technological set of tools is only going to improve.
Well, that's a nice answer. And would you like to mention something we didn't mention?
Good question. Another thing that HortGrow has been trying to address is fair trade practices in substrate. It's something that's been taken seriously, particularly by the Dutch in other horticultural industries. Other crops like berries, tomatoes. It seems like it's been less important for cannabis growers in recent years, which is funny because, cannabis kind of came from the hippie culture and subcultures of, people that were trying to be more aware of these things. But there's certainly, just within the cocoa industry, a lot of unfavorable practices happening in the industry, people being underpaid or not paid at all. And, as hard as it has been sometimes financially, HortGrow's done an amazing job with just trying to stay the course, paying all our employees a very fair wage in India, being fair trade certified, obviously not hiring children or anything like that, because this is a real issue in the industry. And we're going to continue to try to set that standard as much as possible.
Well, thank you. That's it for my questions, and I'm glad you came on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.